All right, let's dive into a story that's, well, it's pretty powerful. It's about a mother, her son, and how a simple misunderstanding can just spiral completely out of control, especially within the German social system. And it leaves us with this really tough question. When two different cultures meet, whose rules are the right ones for raising a child?
And right there, in her own words, that's the heart of it all, isn't it? That's Miriam, the mother, speaking. And that one single thought just perfectly sets the stage for this whole conflict. See, it's not about anyone being intentionally mean or malicious. It's about a clash of perspectives, a clash so big it could literally tear a family apart.
Okay, so to really truly get what happened here, we have to try and see this whole situation through Miriam's eyes. Let's start with her side of the story.
So this is Miriam Ndolo. She's a mother, and she is incredibly proud and protective of her 10-year-old son, Joshua. Her whole approach to parenting, it's built on this deep-seated belief in respecting your elders. That's a huge deal in her culture. But here's the thing. She's also trying to figure out life in a brand new country. And that feeling of being an outsider, of not quite knowing the rules, it creates this constant underlying anxiety for her.
And you can see this tension playing out in these little everyday moments. You know the kind. Miriam asks Joshua to help set the table, but, well, he's a kid. He's glued to his phone. So her firmness, which to her is just normal parenting, gets a classic eye roll from him. It looks like a simple generation gap, right? But it's so much more than that. It's being blown up by this massive cultural divide.
But here's where things get complicated. While Miriam is dealing with this struggle at home, a completely different narrative about her family is starting to form somewhere else entirely. And it's happening inside the very system that's supposed to protect children. And this is where you can really see the two worlds just colliding. On one side, you have Miriam telling the school's social worker, Frau Stein, look, I'm just teaching him respect. But the school, they're hearing something totally different. What they hear is a little 10-year-old boy saying he's scared. So for Miriam, being firm is a form of love. But for the system, all that shouting, that's a huge red flag.
So of course the school's concerns get passed up the chain to the Jugendamt. That's Germany's youth welfare office. And believe me, they have a lot of power to step into family situations. For a lot of immigrant families, just the name can be really intimidating. And the caseworker, Herr Blume, he looks at Miriam's confusion, her struggling to find the right words, and he doesn't see a cultural barrier. He sees someone who's refusing to cooperate. It's like the bureaucracy just smooths over any kind of nuance. And this is it's Miriam's desperate cry for help. I mean, from her perspective, she's doing everything a good mama's supposed to do. She cooks, she cleans, she provides for her son. In her world, she's doing her job perfectly. She truly, genuinely does not get what they're accusing her of. And the worst part? No one is explaining it in a way that she can actually understand.
So this total breakdown in communication, it leads right to the crisis point of the story. This is where the system's interpretation of events leads to literally the worst thing a parent could ever imagine.
And it's just terrifying how fast this all happens. It starts with a simple meeting at the school. Then, that meeting becomes a formal accusation at the welfare office. And then, before Miriam can even begin to process what's happening, there are officials at her door. They have papers, and they're there to take her son.
I mean, can you just imagine? This is the moment the floor just drops out from under her. As they take her son, Joshua, away. All she can do is beg. Her entire world, everything she's worked for, it's just gone. It's collapsing in a single moment, all because of a misunderstanding that she never, ever saw coming.
But right here, at her absolute lowest point, someone new comes into the picture. And this person, they might just hold the key to building a bridge across this huge, enormous gap.
This is where we meet Amina Dambia. She's a cultural mediator. So what exactly is that? Well, it's way more than just being a translator. A cultural mediator doesn't just change words from one language to another. They translate the meaning behind them, the intention, the cultural rules. They're basically a human bridge between two worlds that are speaking completely different languages, even if they're using some of the same words.
And this is what Amina promises Miriam. And honestly, it's the first moment of real hope we've seen in this whole story. She gets that both sides have a language that needs to be understood. It's not about pointing fingers and saying who's right or who's wrong. It's about finally getting them to hear each other, maybe for the very first time.
So how does she actually do it? It's a three-step strategy, really. First, she reframes what Miriam did for the caseworker. She explains, look, in her culture, demanding obedience is an act of love and protection. Then she turns around and does the same for Miriam, explaining, okay, but here in Germany, that same action is seen as emotional abuse. And finally, and this is key, she changes the whole goal. She argues that this isn't about punishment, it's about empowerment. Give Miriam the tools to adapt, don't just take her son away.
And this single intervention, it completely changes the direction of the entire case. It finally opens up a path towards some kind of resolution, and maybe even some healing.
And it actually works. For the very first time, the caseworker, Herr Blume, he just pauses. He actually listens. And by finally understanding the why behind what Miriam was doing, he starts to see her differently, not as someone being difficult, but as someone who just didn't know. And so, the system agrees to a new plan, a plan that's focused on education and support, which finally paves the way for Miriam and Joshua to be united.
You know, this line at the end of the story, it really just sums everything up perfectly. The problem was never that the mother didn't love her son, or that the system didn't care. The problem was that nobody was really listening. But once that bridge was finally built, the healing could actually start, for everyone.
Now, Miriam's story might be fictional, but it speaks to a very, very real struggle that so many immigrant families face when they're trying to navigate these complicated new systems. So what's the big takeaway here? What are we supposed to learn from all this?
When you boil it all down, the real issue here isn't bad parenting. It's about a system that can feel like a brick wall if you don't already speak its language and know all its unwritten rules. Miriam's story is just this incredible reminder that understanding and communication, they aren't just nice to have. In situations like this, they are absolutely everything. It's a call for the systems themselves to learn to listen, and for all of us to find ways to empower people who are just lost in translation.